It will obviously take more than a quick minute, more than one video, to define first order condition. It'll undefined amount of time, but let's just jump right in and maximizing profits, first order condition. A firm's revenue is simply the output price times the quantity of output sold. A firm's profit equals its revenue minus its cost. We can write profit equals revenue minus cost. Everything is a function of quantity. The firm's optimization problem is to choose the non-negative quantity Q that maximizes its profit. Assume for now that the second order condition is satisfied. The first order condition, FOC, requires that the derivative of the profit function requires the derivative of the profit function, the marginal profit, to be equal to 0. This is the optimal quantity Q star in figure 3.13a. So we see this here. If we kind of figure out what they're doing, it's going to be A right there. Yeah. But it can be quite confusing that P, it's always confusing if P is a, price or profit, that P is a function of Q. Okay, well, they do tell us there, besides all of that, the parabola is going to be the derivative of profit. So it doesn't say anything over there as the MP, the marginal profit, but that is what it is. Yeah. So where it has the derivative of profit, where its slope is 0, that's going to be the Q star there. They're only asking us for that one thing. So this first order condition also implies the following: the derivative of 3.16. The derivative of 3.16 equals the derivative of revenue, marginal revenue, minus the derivative of marginal cost. Therefore, the first order condition, so the marginal profit is going to be the marginal revenue minus the marginal cost equals 0. Therefore, the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. They're going to get into this right now, but that's going to be the second picture right there on the right. Yeah, so that Q star is also where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. And they derive that simply from taking the derivative of the profit function. This is one of the most fundamental principles in microeconomics. To maximize profits, the firm will choose to produce output at point Q star, in which its marginal revenue equals its marginal cost. We can interpret marginal revenue, MR, as follows. It shows how much the revenue goes up if the firm produces and sells 1 extra unit of output. This is the gain for the firm. We already know how to interpret the marginal cost. It shows how much the cost goes up if the firm produces 1 extra unit of output. This is the loss for the firm. Consequently, the firm produces at a quantity such that how much the firm gains from producing 1 extra unit exactly offsets how much it loses from 1 extra unit. That's the Q star where they equal, of course. As always, we are actually talking about marginal changes, but it is easier to think about 1 extra unit of output. This is our marginality principle. The firm makes optimal decisions at the margin, that is, by looking at the cost and benefit of producing a marginal unit, 1 extra unit. Yeah. So figure 3.13b helps us understand the firm's incentive. 3.13b, we know what that is. Yeah. So we can go on in detail, but it's pretty obvious. We don't want to be to the right of Q star. To the right of Q star, the marginal cost is higher than the marginal revenue is. Figure 3.13b helps us understand the firm's incentive. As quantity Q1, we find the marginal revenue of Q1 is greater than the marginal revenue, the marginal cost of Q1, which means that the firm can increase its profit by producing a little bit more. The higher revenue, there's a lot of typos in this, so sometimes it's my fault, sometimes not, but there's a lot of typos in this book. But the higher the revenue, the higher revenue more than compensates the additional production cost. At quantity Q2, we find that which means that the firm can increase its profit by producing a little bit less. A small decrease in revenue would compensate for the larger decrease, blah, blah, blah. So we know what they're talking about. So this next little tidbit is important. Every little kind of interpretation of an equation is kind of a new concept, very important. We know that all they're saying here is we know that revenue is price times quantity, price per unit times the number of units. So if we take the derivative of revenue with respect to Q, it's just going to be the price. So we always have that where the price equals the marginal revenue. Note that the marginal revenue is a horizontal line in figure 3.13b. This is because in perfectly competitive markets, the output price P is fixed. It is not a function of how much the firm produces. Therefore, the derivative of revenue is, the marginal revenue is simply the market price. Consequently, for perfectly competitive markets, we can then write the first order condition as, so what is the first order condition? That the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. The marginal revenue equals the constant price. Therefore, the price equals the marginal cost, It is important to note that the first order condition has nothing to do with the fixed cost. Since the fixed cost drops out once we take the derivative, rewrite profit. Okay, so this is one where we should kind of take pause and look at it here. I think we're going to derive this a little bit in the next video here. I just want to kind of write that out myself. So it is important to note that the first order condition has nothing to do with the fixed cost, since the fixed cost drops out once we take the derivative, rewrite profit. So we'll take a look at that later. Where we define the variable profit as revenue minus the variable cost, since the fixed cost is not a function of Q, choosing a quantity that maximizes profit is equal to choosing a quantity that maximizes variable profit. Of course, the fixed cost affects the actual profit of the firm, but it does not affect the optimal choice of Q. So then we kind of go down into this descriptive here. So they have a 3.14a. Okay, so it starts getting pretty hardcore here. We have to read closely, take a look at what they're doing here. 3.14 A, B, C, D, and E. In the next video, we're going to kind of derive this little thing. It's not a big deal, this. I'm just trying to do it step by step. But in the next video, we'll cover this, and then we'll kind of get into those graphs.